In 50 years since the civil rights movement's March on Washington, economic equality is still elusive by many measures, since Martin Luther King spoke of the dream. Our cover story looks at milestones made, but with many more yet ahead.
Because they marched, doors of opportunity and education swung open so their daughters and sons could finally imagine a life for themselves beyond washing somebody else's laundry or shining somebody else's shoes.
50 years after Martin Luther King Jr. evoked the dream, this image brought it rushing back.
Because they marched, city councils changed and state legislatures changed and Congress changed and yes, eventually the White House changed.
It's hard to believe. I wish my grandfather would have been alive to see it.
But decades after the March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom, the event's full name, and the 1965 Voting Rights Act, when 42% of blacks lived in poverty, economic equality has been elusive, even by the most recent measures. Black unemployment is 12.6%. For whites, it's 6.6%. Since 2009, black income has dropped 10.9%. White income has dropped 3.6%. The gap in household income hasn't changed in 50 years, and recently it's become harder for black entrepreneurs to get started.
Access to capital, I think, is a huge issue for people, but I think education in many of our communities is also an issue.
The nation's 44.5 million blacks comprise 14.2% of its population, but 8.9% of college graduates and 8.2% of corporate managers.
With the decline in manufacturing jobs and other jobs that have paid livable salaries, if you don't have an education, things have gotten worse.
Casey says research shows the gap between haves and have-nots within the black community has widened. While black entrepreneurs, prime source of collateral for business loans, their homes have lost value.
Home values have declined a lot, and specifically in African American neighborhoods. So if your home is underwater, that will significantly limit your ability to borrow money.
African Americans' net worth is largely tied to their home values, whereas we look at white America, they're more diversified.
Despite peaks and valleys in the economic cycle since the 1960s, the gaps are basically the same. One notable gain, however, instead of 42% of blacks living in poverty 50 years ago, it's now 28%. For whites, a little less than 10%.